March 10, 1988, marked the sudden passing of Andy Gibb at the age of 30. Too young to become a complete legend, yet too famous for his death to fade quickly, his loss left an unsettling emptiness. His heart, worn by years of excess, quiet collapses, and relentless self-exhaustion to keep pace with fame, gave out unexpectedly. There was no final performance, no carefully orchestrated farewell. The world was left with silence. Andy had been the prince of pop disco, radiant in his youth, yet his departure reminded everyone that even the brightest lights can burn out before their story is fully told. Early life, born into music. Andy Gibb entered the world in 1958 into a family where music was already the lifeblood. Before he could even recall a classroom, he was surrounded by melodies, lyrics, and the routines of budding stars. His brothers were leaving home to perform, while Andy remained, caught between pride and a sense of distance from the world moving ahead. Material comfort and attention arrived early, but alongside admiration was isolation. He carried a surname that made him visible, but also marked him as someone always measured against the success of others. Childhood was a backdrop of music and expectation, not of ordinary friendships. Musical foundations, a brother's influence, Barry Gibb's presence in Andy's life offered guidance and inspiration. Barry handed Andy his first guitar, encouraged him to sing by instinct, and became both mentor and ideal. This relationship was a source of security, yet quietly established a benchmark Andy could never escape. By adolescence, he devoted himself entirely to music, leaving school early and drifting through rehearsal rooms and small performances. On stage, Andy experienced the rare joy of being recognized as an individual rather than simply the Gibb family's youngest member. Yet his sense of self remained fragile, forming slowly under the weight of external expectations and the pressure to measure up to family success. Early career carving his own space. Andy's early steps into music were not imposed by fame but born of his desire for independence. In 1974, he formed Melody Fair, performing small, modest shows that allowed him to experiment and find his voice. The excitement of facing audiences directly gave him both exhilaration and insight into his own limitations. He demanded seriousness from his band, avoided alcohol and drugs, and protected his talent fiercely. At the same time, he moved in a world softened by family support. Failures were manageable, and setbacks, though discouraging, did not push him to the edge. Andy's first forays into performance were lessons in patience, resilience, and self-discovery. Australian journey, growth and comfort. Australia became a turning point for Andy's development, a place to refine his craft with fewer immediate dangers than his brothers had faced. Unlike the Bee Gees, who endured hardship and deprivation during early tours, Andy arrived with support, media attention, and an easier path. Studio sessions, television appearances, and performing songs helped him grow faster than he could understand. Yet the accelerated exposure also meant he learned about fame before fully knowing himself. Success arrived while his maturity lagged, planting the seeds of later struggles. His talent was undeniable, but the life lessons necessary to manage sudden acclaim were incomplete. Meteoric fame, a dream. Realized by 19, Andy achieved a remarkable feat. 3 consecutive debut singles reached #1 on the Billboard charts. In an instant, he became the face of late 1970s pop, young, handsome, and emotionally expressive. Recognition came before he could fully process it, before he could anchor himself in a stable sense of identity. The admiration of millions was intoxicating but isolating. Andy was pulled between wanting to shine independently and being overshadowed by the Gibb legacy. The pressures of perfection and constant visibility left little room for vulnerability, personal mistakes, or simply growing at his own pace. His heart and voice carried the brilliance and fragility of youth simultaneously. Inner struggles, the price of spotlight. Behind the smile was a man contending with opposing forces. He longed to be loved as a person, yet was consumed as a product. Talent and ambition collided with the expectations of fame, producing exhaustion and anxiety. Andy's life became a delicate balance, maintaining the outward glow while quietly fragmenting inside. Over the years, repeated collapses, both emotional and physical, wore him down. His brilliance was inseparable from his vulnerability. The world saw a prince of pop disco, but few glimpsed the man struggling beneath the stage lights. Fame came with a cost, one measured not in chart positions, but in the slow erosion of self. The Gibb shadow, family, and identity. Being a Gibb had dual effects. Barry's mentorship was loving but established a high bar. The family name opened doors, but imposed invisible pressures. Every performance, every interview became a measure against the standards set by older siblings. Andy wrestled with forging an identity apart from the Gibb legacy. He was not just a talented musician, but a younger brother in a dynasty of success. The very fame that empowered him also confined him. At times, he achieved moments of autonomy, yet the shadow of his family name always loomed, complicating relationships, creative decisions, and his sense of personal accomplishment. Creative expression. Songs as sanctuary music remained Andy's true refuge. Writing songs, performing in intimate settings, and creating for himself allowed a fragile sense of freedom. Melody Fair and subsequent performances gave him the rare experience of control, however fleeting. Every chord, every lyric was a step toward self-definition. Fans responded to emotion rather than image, finding authenticity in Andy's voice. In those moments, he was not just a Gibb or a pop phenomenon, but a young man sharing his heart. The contrast between the purity of music and the pressures of fame heightened the poignancy of his story, marking him as a figure remembered more in feeling than in spectacle. Legacy, the power of silence. Andy Gibb's legacy is subtle yet profound. Unlike stars whose lives are defined by controversy or comebacks, Andy's story lives in emotion, in the delicate impact of his music. His voice carries the memory of a moment when pop could touch the heart without cynicism. Listeners return not for narrative, but for experience, the thin slice of youth, hope, and talent encapsulated in song. The quiet resonance of his life serves as a reminder that early fame can exact a toll invisible to the public eye. Andy's brilliance remains in the music, unadorned, lingering in the spaces between memory and imagination. Reflection. Voices that stop too soon. If Andy had more time to grow outside the spotlight, to live at a slower, self-directed pace, perhaps pop history would have shifted differently. We cannot know. What is certain is that some voices end prematurely, not because of a lack of talent, but because life demands more than youth can bear. Andy's story is both a caution and a testament. Brilliance can emerge too fast, while human resilience needs time to match it. His songs endure as a bridge between the young man who lived too quickly and the listener who experiences his brilliance anew, decades after the lights dimmed. Conclusion. Remembering Andy Gibb. Andy Gibb remains a haunting, tender figure in pop music history, not for scandal, not for longevity, but for the purity of emotion he left behind. His life reminds us that fame can be both illuminating and exhausting, that early success carries hidden costs, and that talent alone cannot shield against the pressures of expectation. Yet, even in brevity, he gave the world a voice that endures. When his songs play, we are transported to a moment when music could move hearts unreservedly. In remembering Andy, we honor not just his achievements, but the fragile humanity behind them.